Welcome everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's webinar, Getting Your School's Buy-in for a Hydroponics Program. My name is Emily Klinsky. I am on the marketing team here at Realityworks. Presenting today, we have with us Jamie McIntosh, one of our product managers here at Realityworks. Jamie has been with Realityworks for 9 years and came to us with an extensive education background as a former educator teaching in Wisconsin and in Colorado. His topics cover student engagement, technology in the classroom, gaming, filling the skills gap, business education, and various agriculture and welding topics. He is a fantastic resource for today's webinar. So with that being said, I'm going to pass things over to Jamie.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you for taking the time today to come here to listen, to hear what we have to say about hydroponics and how maybe it can be implemented into your classroom as well. And want to just start out with a few business pieces. This is being recorded, and so we will be sharing this PowerPoint presentation and some other different resources for you through email at a later time. So we'll be sending that out shortly after we do this presentation here. Thank you for your time, and just want to go through a few things as we get started here. So the first one, this is a Zoom meeting, and so just a few reminders in this Zoom meeting. First, this is something close to what you might be able to see on your site right now, what you're actually being able to see here, and what you want to be looking at here. And if you have questions, there is a chat area down at the bottom. Feel free to click on that, and through that you can then ask questions. You can type in your questions. It's something where as we go along, maybe it's not something you are needing to know right now, but you want it to be answered before we're done. That's a great place to put it. And then we will make sure at the end we do have a question and answer time that you get those questions answered. So please put those in as you see them coming to you. If it's something that later on we answer, that's no big deal. That is just another piece where you get your questions answered, and that's what we want to do. So with that said, want to also just give you right off the bat an opportunity here for some curriculum for your usage. One of the things in this time in 2020 here, we have included our curriculum for you free of charge. You can go out and you can grab those resources. And so just want to show you in this world here, you go to our website, realityworks.com. As you're at our website there, all you have to do is click on at the bottom here where it says COVID-19 response. You click on that and it'll come right in here and it'll give you different resources from our webinars. We have some free lesson plans on career exploration, might be interesting for you. And then we have program resources. Both our guides and our curriculum are here. So you can go into that then, and it will drop you into all of our different products that have curriculum involved. So in this case, we have hydroponics and our plant science. It is something where, as you scroll down here, you will see our plant producer and plant lab education hydroponic system. Right there is where you click on that, and it will bring you right into there, and you have our user guides, our curriculum, and then a completion certification for your students once they would go in through our program. So right there is some options for you. If you are new or if you want a few extra resources, this would be a great place for you to go to be able to grab that. Again, go to our website, go down to our COVID-19 response, and then there's free resources for you there. So with that being said, still saying keep our distance here. The hope and the push is wanting people to be back in schools, back into normalcy come the fall here, and that is our hope. And so, keep your distance, but at the same time, as we get started here, we're going to give you some different options and ideas about how to implement hydroponics in your classroom, but it's also something that you could be using and your students could be doing even on their own. So we're going to be talking through a few of those. So let's get started here. Our first focus here that we're going to talk about today is gaining understanding of the importance of hydroponics. Why is it something that you should think about having in your classroom? Why is it something you should have for yourself? The next thing is we're going to go through 5 steps to starting a program. Real kind of just fundamental things that you can do to get yourself to that next step and get to that next level. And then we're going to talk about learning the hydroponic curriculum and our education systems that we have here at Realityworks and see if that might be a fit for you. So let's start with our 5 keys, all right? So the first key of why grow hydroponics is something where it's important for you to think about what are you teaching with your students? What are some things that you want your students to come away with? And in this case, the importance of limited space is something that we're finding more and more of. We have more and more people moving to urban areas. We have more and more need for growing up as much as growing out. This is one of those things where limited space is something that is very, very important to start thinking about our future. And for our students, how are they going to be growing products in the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years? And so in many locations, it's very difficult to grow plants in certain areas, and sometimes it's not even just the location in the sense of the space, but it also is the climate. It is also something where there are certain places where you can't easily grow certain produce. So Alaska is a great example where they don't have the season to be able to grow year round. Arizona is another one where their desert conditions sometimes doesn't allow for growing in that place. So not only in the sense of the location of limited space in your classroom, in what you're doing, but also in your climate and in the weather conditions. And one of the things that can help with that is growing hydroponically by being able to bring it into a classroom, bring it into any place that you're at. If it's a dark room, if it is your basement, if it is the middle of your school, you can grow hydroponically by bringing your produce kind of in-house or into the hydroponic world because of the use of artificial light and the use of fans for wind movement and nutrients that comes and is included. So you don't have to have soil, but it gives you an option there as well. Another piece, and kind of talking about that same thing, is the clean and it is very clean and it is very efficient. So it is something where, again, you're not using soil as your kind of your grow method. And so in this case, you are not only just able to grow vertically or grow up instead of growing out, you also can grow kind of in a cleaner way because you can include nutrients into water versus into soil. It's also something with the ability to kind of have this closed environment, okay? And when you think about closed environment, and I already talked about Arizona and Alaska, in your closed environment, it's something where you can grow year round, no matter what the weather outside is. And we see this all over the country where weather changes, where we have droughts, we have storms, we have hurricanes, we have forest fires. There's different types of climate change that happens all over. In this case, you can grow indoors. You can grow in a warehouse where there is no windows whatsoever and still grow produce based on how you are actually growing it in the hydroponic system. So it's important that you look and see and are interacting with, again, how are we growing things and why would it be helpful? In this case, we also find, in the sense of clean and efficient, is that it's something where as you grow with artificial light, you have the opportunity to have your grow lights on your plants for a much longer time than the sun is up, making them grow faster, growing stronger, growing bigger, those kind of things. It becomes a piece of the puzzle of a different way to grow. Another one is this food shortage and growing issues, kind of what we talked about before, and just keeping on that mode. This idea of food shortage and growing issues is one of those things is the weather. It is ever changing. Another big piece is biodiversity is something that is also, and biosecurity is also something that is involved there, is making sure that you're keeping your plants free from different types uh, of diseases and pests. Well, in this case, by having in a closed system like a hydroponic unit, or having it in a more closed system, you're able to then be able to bring in the conditions that you want. You don't have to be held on by the weather. So if you're in Alaska and it's snowing outside, you can still be growing leafy vegetables. You can still be doing those kind of things. If it's something where the temperature is 110 degrees in Arizona, you can still be growing indoors and have them not be wilting. So the weather's a big piece of it. The other piece is just that, is that there is things that we are seeing and you're hearing of, is these ideas of food shortage, that we're having those kind of issues that are still part of this. And so one of the questions is where are we going to grow our food? How are we going to grow food? We're seeing it growing from growing your food and having it shipped across the United States, things of that nature, and actually coming closer and closer. We're seeing it with 2020, with our pandemic that's going on right now. Where is that food coming from? Are we going to have a food supply shortage? Is it going to be something that the supply chain stops? Well, how do you fix that? Well, you could work to grow your own food. You're able to do it locally and closer. That can also help with hydroponics. So again, another key piece of that. The next one is increasing growth rates and the time to harvest. One of the things that we found is using our products and using hydroponic systems is that you can grow plants a lot quicker. And so that means that you can grow a lot more as well. So it's not only that you can grow in the sense of your plants grow faster and are quicker to harvest, but what that means then is over time, as you have those plants growing quicker, you can then harvest them and you can start the next batch quicker as well. So over time, you start to gain more and get more harvests out of a calendar year or out of a certain cycle or a school year, whatever you're going for, than you could in regular season. If you think about it, hydroponics, by being able to kind of have a closed system, allowing you to be able to do and grow when you want without environmental issues, then all of a sudden, if you have a rainy season, or if it's a longer raising season, or you have a drought time, any of those types of things can stop or stunt your growth for your produce. In this case, by having hydroponics, that doesn't come into play at all. Other things is that you're focusing on water and nutrients. And so having enough water and having the right nutrients. When you're soil based, you have to make sure that the soil's good. Are there other things playing into it? Or those kind of things. Now, not bad to be able to do those. And so hopefully you don't hear me saying those other kind of growing methods are bad. It's just different. This is a different way to do that and different way to grow. So the last one here with why grow with hydroponics and getting you thinking about, okay, the other things that can come from showing my students and working with students on what hydroponics is and how to grow it is you can learn and experiment with new ways to grow plants. This is where we really get into what I would say that STEM world. You start to get into different pieces of the puzzle. So math is a good example. How many harvests can you get? How many plants can you get? How much pounds of produce can you get? Going into kind of how much water is used and things of that nature. Another piece of this is going into and looking at kind of your ability to include science. Talk about plant growth, talk about plant science in this world as well. Looking at engineering, okay, how do we work to engineer a quicker growing plant? How do we grow a plant that's hardier? Or maybe that, okay, we're doing it in water, so what are the challenges that brings forth? Now, we as a company have grown a lot of different products, a lot of different produce, and a lot of produce that we grow that turns into, things that can be taken home and be eaten. Some of them we've had to experiment with. We had to check and see, okay, how does things like tomatoes grow hydroponically? How does jalapenos grow? And we'll talk about that a little later, but those are the kind of features that we look at and kind of bring into that learning ability. Let's try, see if it works. Some work, some don't. So it challenges your ideas and your growing methodology to find better ways to grow food. It makes kids start to look at what are they eating, why are they eating it, how do they grow it, and the purposes behind all of those things. So those are kind of the 5 keys to kind of why use hydroponic. Now I want to go into 5 different keys, 5 keys to start a hydroponic program. So kind of we gave you the why you should do it, and hopefully you see some of those things from us that you look at and you say, hey, yeah, there's some interesting pieces of the puzzle here. I'm interested in seeing what's next. Okay, now we're going to start talking to you about, well, what is next? How do you get something like this started? And maybe you have it in your classrooms already. Maybe it's something that you don't and you want to include. Either way, I really hope that this brings you that thought process of one, okay, this is some interesting features that I want to maybe bring in, or hey, I already have one going, but hey, there's some great resource here that could help me just make it that much better. So first off is stepping through startup, okay? Really kind of looking at the startup and what does it actually mean, okay? So in this case, as we look at this slide, what we're talking about in hydroponically speaking here is our product, the product that you want to create is a hydroponic system, all right? And in that, you need certain things for that to work. So for example, you need lights because it needs to have light. All right. Now, that might be an artificial light. That might be something where if you have a greenhouse and you have that light coming in, that's a piece of that puzzle. Fans is another piece. All right. Unless it's outdoors where it can get that wind movement, you need fans to be able to move the plants. What does that do? That helps to gain some of the ability so to gain some of that ability to grow your plants. Now, I just got a great question here and says that my I am big and my screen is small and want to be able to see the screen a little bit bigger. So I'm going to stop my video and hopefully that will help in that world. So thank you for that as we go through this. Great help there, and hopefully that changed it for you. So the next thing here is let's go through the 5 here, all right? So in this case, the first part is do your research. One of the things that I really would encourage you, and you're starting it, if you haven't started already, you're doing it right now, okay? Your research is really important. Starting out in this case is very important because part of the whole purpose of this is being able to understand what you're getting yourself into, and then also learning from others who maybe have done it and then not having those same problems that they had. Now, there's always challenges that could come up, but what can you do and really look at, learn what's available, what is out there, who's doing it, what space and time limitations that you might have, because that's a big piece. And as you look at this, and as you might be thinking, okay, this is something I want to implement in the next year or the next semester or whenever you're looking at doing something like this, okay, how much time am I willing to give to this? What are the space limitations that I might have? And do I have space limitations? Also, what is the goal that I'm trying to accomplish? Is it something where I want students to be able to eat the food that they grew? Is it something where I want them to be able to experiment and try new things? What are you looking for that outcome to be? And that's important because maybe it's just a enjoyable piece that brings learning by doing in that sense. And that's a great thing too. So how much time are you willing to give? What is available in that sense, because there's different ways to do that. Now, we'll talk today about one of 2 of our products that you can use, and we've tried to create products that help you do it in a time effective and a easy to use manner. So it's not something that you're taking a lot of time, but it allows your students to interact and engage with. There might be some who are wanting more of that where you are doing engagement. And so we have different products in that world that help so your students can do more experimentation versus a production type, I want to grow and grow as many as we can. So those are all available for you and can help you just in that sense as well. So the next one is create a plan. I am a big proponent of, if you have a plan, all right, it's that old saying that family plan is planning to fail. And one of the things that you really want to do is you want to be successful. And so you need to create a plan. Now, one of the things that you have to look at and look to here is just this, is when do you want to start growing? All right. When do you want to harvest? What materials do you need? Those are all different kind of checklists that you can put in place and start to be able to say, okay, these are different things that I'm looking for. These are things that I want. How do I get to that place? Once you have that plan in place, then all of a sudden it starts to change a little bit for you in the sense of, okay, how can I accomplish that? And sometimes that maybe overwhelming feeling, all of a sudden it doesn't seem as overwhelming. Want to also talk about these pictures here on the side, or these charts, I should say, on the side here. This is something that within our curriculum, we have different opportunities for you in our quick start guide, where it talks through, as well as our curriculum, where it talks through the different type of plants that you can grow. It gives things like how long it takes to germinate, how long it takes before harvest. It gives you different options in that world too. These are all things that help you with your plan, because what you might start looking at is saying, okay, I want to start growing stuff, but I want to grow it from the beginning of school till Thanksgiving. And then when Thanksgiving breaks, I want to stop, because that's when a natural break might be. Maybe you want to go through Christmas, but there's a 2-week break at Christmas, and you don't want to have to come in and check your product, your produce as it's growing. That's something too where you can look at this and create your plans. Maybe you want it to go where you're not doing any of the work, but your students are doing all of it. Those are all things that you can create and work through. And so creating a plan is a very important part of it. The next one then, and unfortunately, I wish this wasn't the case, but in this case, it is to expect challenges and triumphs, okay? There are going to be challenges. So I wish that wasn't always the case. I wish it would always be, but part of this that is the great piece about this product and our products of hydroponic in the hydroponic world is that the challenges really are what create learning opportunities. So growth is going to happen, both figuratively speaking and literally. There is going to be growth in your produce. We have yet to see growth not happen with any of our products that we sell in the hydroponic world. It will happen. Now, it grows at different variables because of what you can do with your students. So there'll come challenges, but at the same time, there are extreme triumphs that can come from this. So there are going to be unexpected opportunities that come out of this. Maybe it is by getting more students involved and interested in this type of class or in this type of study. It might be something where, and we've seen it already, where the students and staff who are part of our hydroponic programs, they reach out to the elementary, the middle school, the high school, they reach out to other classes and to their food programs, and they get to see others eating the food and the produce that they have grown. We see that they have different opportunities to bring this home to their families and show different sides of what nutritious eating is and things of that nature. So these are all opportunities here to be able to share with your students as well. And then that's the other piece, is share the experiences, both the positives and the negatives. Sometimes the failures are what students, and I know in my own experience, students, I remember sometimes things that I didn't do right. And then it's that purpose of, well, let's work to not let that happen again. So sometimes those are the kind of things that really help. So put this in here because it is something where it's going to be a great learning experience, but sometimes it's through the challenges that make it that as well. Another one is learn from others. So in this world, and kind of the point here that I'm trying to make is that there are people who are out there. Now, in your local community, you may not know of anybody who is doing hydroponic growing. Maybe you can do a quick search online and you'll find 2 or 3 or 4 different places that do hydroponic growing. It's something where those are great resources to learn from. Now, here at Realityworks, we have our lead test engineer, Dave Brack, and that's the top picture there. He has been growing and working with our hydroponic systems for over a year. He's grown probably 30 to 40 different types of produce through our systems, and all he does is he tests them and sees what works, what doesn't, why is it working, what's better. And then we include all that into our documentation, into our guides, into our curriculum. So then it is helping and being passed on to you as you then bring it into your classroom and help. Now, at the same time, there's a picture below there is that we have in 2020, we were chosen as an honorable mention of Fast Company world-changing ideas. The ability to have your students learn about sustainable growing and hydroponics in a atmosphere where they can learn and they can grow and they can challenge themselves is this not only a sustainable idea, but it could be a world-changing idea. And so in that case, then growing and letting students and learning, helping students learn how to grow these things is where all this comes from. And so you can learn from others. Now, the other piece of that is what you're doing right now. You are learning from others who have been there. And one of the things that we will be continuing to do is we are continuing to be here as a resource for you. So you can actually, the email that I sent out, you can directly email me on questions. We get a lot of those kind of things. We had that question this morning where a customer put it on social media, and they asked the question of, okay, I'm getting ready this fall to start growing my hydroponics, my produce, my hydroponics unit. So what I'm worried about is just the question that I asked before is, how do I know, or when do I know I shouldn't be growing because it's coming up to a long break? Like think Christmas break or think spring break. What should I do for that? Well, we actually have diagrams in our curriculum, in our guides, showing you how long it takes to grow. And so we can put in place, and they can put in place, a schedule of what produce to be growing when. So then as it's getting ready to harvest, maybe they have to harvest a day or two early, but they can harvest right up to the last week before Christmas break, and they can go through that order and say, yep, I should be able to be just fine. Christmas break or the holiday break comes along, and boom, I can then harvest it all, clean it all up, and it's ready to go when we get back. Same kind of thing for spring break or other breaks that you might have. The last one here is just do it. All right, start the process. Create space to start growing. One of the things that is kind of involved with all this is just that is you can do this. Find a growing system that works for your classroom, for your lifestyle that you are creating as a teacher, and then go after it. All right, act on the plan that we talked about earlier for creating. So that is just something where you got to kind of get your hands wet in this case, and kind of go into that world. So with that being said, this is all kind of culminating in great learning opportunities for you and for your students. So career exploration, STEM, sustainability, that farm to table, nutrient rich, and then learning engagement. This is all there for you to be able to really create new learning opportunities for your students. So let's talk a little bit about some of what we have, and something that, again, is given to you by us. And you can go, our hydroponics curriculum here is here for you, but just kind of introduction. We focus on kind of every lesson has a focus. It's getting that student attention, then a learn kind of how you're presenting and creating that learning opportunity, and then a review at the end. So in this case here, with some of ours, our focus is our hydroponics. What is hydroponics? Types of hydroponic systems, and then we go into the main parts of a system. So again, understanding the process. So going in, and now we put on this, the question might be an online question, depending on if we're in remote learning come the fall, or it might be in class. But what do you need to grow plants and produce? And a lot of times students will answer that question before they even know about hydroponics, where they'll include the idea of soil, all right, and sunlight. And some of those things are true, but you don't need sunlight, you need grow lights. There's different variables there, all right? And so you can talk through some of those different things, all right? What is the temperature that it should be at? What does that matter? Those are all things that if students start to think differently, they start to learn and start saying, okay, maybe when I thought it had to be sunny and nice outside to grow, and that's the only way you could grow anything, well, that's not true. And it changes their mindset, it changes and shifts their thinking, and then ultimately their behavior. We then get into learning. And one of the things that we talk about in this world is we start working for and looking at our idea of learning, okay? So in this case, there are really 5 or 6, I'll say, different types of hydroponic systems that you can use. They all have different positives or pros, and they also have different cons. And so kind of looking at that, and really when I say cons, it's really more of different variables of what you might be wanting in a system. So our learning here, actually our curriculum goes through and it talks about each type of those different systems, what each one does, how it actually works, what's going on as different types of growth happens. So different systems here are being explained to the students, so then they get an understanding of the different types of systems before they go in and actually start doing. All right. Now, I said we also have things like aeroponics, we also have aquaponics, which is a little different than hydroponics. So about 5 of hydro type hydroponic, but for, and then aeroponics and aquaponics are included as well. The other piece for review here is that we have a lot of different, not only slides, but we also have different concepts that we reinforce with quizzes and other assessment pieces. So when the question is what do you need to grow plants to produce plants? In this here, it goes through all those different things. You need the plants itself. You need light, grow mediums, water, nutrients. You need oxidization. You need water or wind and airflow. So bringing it kind of full circle, it also then talks through all the different pieces of what you need to then be able to grow hydroponically, allowing you to get students to understand the process before they actually get and do the hands-on learning. So kind of to wrap up here with our time, we have 2 hydroponic systems that Realityworks has created. Again, you can see there's 2 different systems, 2 different options here. So the first one here is our Plant Lab educational hydroponic system. This one retails at just under $1,000, and this one has 33 different sites. But the big feature here is it's a plant lab. So it's like a laboratory here where each shelf unit has its own hydroponic water tank, allowing you to put in different nutrients and have different light source for all 3 different ones. So every single one has a light source, every single one has a fan or a wind source, and then it all have water tanks and nutrient available for that as well. So that is all available for you there through our Plant Lab educational hydroponic system. Other one is our plant producer unit. This one retails just under $2,000. And this one here, our plant producer here, again, they both are kind of that shelf system. So it can slide up against a wall and it goes vertically and not, you know, kind of spanning out here. So it's a vertical grow in these different options here. But in this case, this one has 42 sites. So it has more options, but it's our plant producer educational products, hydroponic system. And in this case, that producer allows you, and it has 1 tank at the bottom, and it feeds through the nutrients in the water, the first, second, and third shelf. The first shelf having a bigger area so you can grow larger or taller plants that you are going to then harvest in there. So our plant producer and our plant lab are 2 hydroponic systems. Really gone into a lot of work to try to make it as user-friendly and ease of use for you to be able to grow, add your nutrients, check it and watch it, and then tweak things as it goes, and then harvest within the time that's needed. So so a good question just came up in those about those 2 is what is the average cost to maintain the system? That's a great question, all right? And what we found, again, we've done testing for over a year. And so one of the reasons we have done all this testing, growing and growing, is to try to find some of those costs, all right? And I would say a ballpark here. I can't give an exact number because, again, it also depends on what plants you're going to be harvesting, how often you harvest. But what we found by doing kind of plant after plant after plant, it is something where the average cost to maintain usually is between that $50 and $100 range, okay? And so one of those things that kind of go into that is just that where it's this plant, really it's the system where you have to add nutrients, okay, every so often, and then after you harvest, you start a new harvest, you're going to have nutrients as time goes on, and you have the seed cost, the water cost. Those are kind of your big pieces there. And again, depending on how much you grow is going to be different, all right? But you really have your seed cost and your nutrient costs. Seeds can be very inexpensive, especially in different parts of the time, depending on the produce you're having. And then nutrients, you can do a nutrient bottle of nutrients that can last what we found at least a semester for about $15. So, you know, you're adding 2 semesters in there, about $30 of that, and then your seed costs. So you might be hitting that $50 range. But those are kind of a ballpark answers for you in that. So moving on, great question, by the way. Thank you for asking that. To get to your resources here, again, we have resources for you. You can go to realityworks.com to get our resources. We also have underneath our free resources, underneath our agriculture science here, is your guides and curriculum for that. Again, just to show you, you click on this learn more underneath our website. When you click on that, it brings you into webinars, free lessons, and then this is program resources, so guides and curriculum. And when you click on that, you go into hydroponics and plant science under our agriculture line, and that's where you get our plant producer and plant lab hydroponic system. Now, just a reminder, we will send this out in the email as well, so you will be able to see that, okay, and be able to go into that. And once you're in there, then it has your user guides, your curriculum, your slides, anything that you're looking for in that. Also, want to also share with you that you can go to our website and find out more information about the different products itself. Another piece here is if you go to our website and click on this hydroponic education implementation, all right, at the very top before you scroll down to see our hydroponics products, when you click on that, we will then send you a electronic resource here of our guide, Hydroponics Know How to Grow Tips and Tricks for Starting Out. So this is something where it is a kind of a guide, a downloadable guide for you to start looking at, okay, I want to kind of go into that world. How do I do this? Okay, what do I do in that world? Okay, so that is definitely something for you to be used. We got another great question here. I'm asking, just to clarify, hydroponic systems can be incorporated and utilized within a functioning greenhouse environment, and students can see different aspects of both systems produce products and run experiments. Absolutely, they both can be used. Now, one of the great pieces about this and what you'll find is with the hydroponic systems, and again, if you have a very full greenhouse environment, okay, all you need in our world is you need a cord, because you have to plug in our unit, and so a power source. We have a cord, and then you have to have a power source for that. And so you plug in the unit, and then you have to add your nutrients and your water. The great thing about the having it in greenhouse environment is you're actually kind of, what you're going to find is you'll double up. If you have it in the greenhouse, and again, a lot of times greenhouses are pretty full, you can tuck it away against a wall on the side, but what's going to happen is you're going to get that sunlight from the greenhouse is allowing, but you also have your grow lights. And so one of the things that could be really beneficial in that world is that you're getting your sun from the sun, and then you have your grow lights. So when the greenhouse starts to get dark because the sun goes down, that's when you can actually have your grow lights turn on, allowing that to be able to grow it faster. And that's where you really see the different aspects of the different systems, where one getting more light, getting those kind of things, then sometimes you may not have, and depending on your greenhouse, you may have grow lights in there. But in that case, then seeing what that does, and seeing what's going on. So great question in there as well. So good question. So the other piece that I want to just show you and talk to you about is Realityworks has a virtual training booth, all right? And what that is that if you go to our website and you put in realityworks.com, and we'll also send you this link as well, it is something where we have a virtual training booth. What that allows was in the virtual training booth is you to go in and see all of our products, including our hydroponic products. And so it's all kind of virtual at this time of year because we aren't getting to the trade shows this summer. And so then you can also register. And if you register, we're also going to be doing a product voucher and doing a drawing for $250 product voucher as well. So sign up for that, because that could be just that nice little nugget, that a little extra oomph to take away some of the cost of our product. So with that said, I've had a few questions sprinkled throughout our time here. I do want to say thank you, and if you do have questions, would love to answer your questions that you have at this time. If you haven't already asked it, and those who did ask, again, thank you, and I hope I answered it to satisfaction. If I didn't, ask again, because want to give your questions answered as much as I can. So thank you for your time, and really appreciate that. So some of the questions coming in is, do you have an aquaponics unit as well? Currently, no. That is something that we've looked into. We don't have it in an aquaponics unit. So that might be around the corner, but right now we're only in hydroponics. So question comes out is some tips if you're looking to start a hydroponic system outdoors. The big piece for outdoors is, and I would say is, what are you, is to ask a question more than anything, is what are you doing, okay, in the sense of to keep it away from or in need of weather. Okay, and so again, part of the things with the hydroponic world that's really great is the ability to have grow lights, to be able to do those different features that keeps it away from the weather. And so, you know, if it's something where, do you have it under an awning? Do you have it where there's an opportunity so that weather piece isn't going to be uh, uh, a real concern for you, because that could be a factor, especially, you know, during quote unquote non-growing seasons. A lot of times hydroponics is something where by keeping indoors, then you have those times to be able to uh, uh, keep on growing even if the season isn't right for it. So that would be something, is to ask a question of, you know, how do you keep it from quote unquote the heavy winds or the rains, or you know, and all that's good. I'm not saying that rain's bad for it, or, you know, wind's bad for it, but the control is the real big piece of it. So how do you keep it from then the cold weather or the extreme hot weather based on what you're growing? So that would be something for you to think about. Tips on then is, you know, if you can have it in an awning, or you can have it in a 2/3 or sorry 3/4 closure. So, you know, you have maybe one or two sides open, but you can still have it kind of tucked away. That would be something that would be important maybe to do. Are there grants available? That is a great question. Now, there are grants available. You can find them. There are different things for your area, but let me just come up here and come in for us here and look at our website, because let me see here. I got to find it here. I'm sorry. Here we go. Under resources, and I think you can still see my screen. I'm on our Realityworks website here, and under resources, there is a funding center. There, right there, it says funding center. When I click on that, this comes in here, and this is where you want to go to. Right there, and it says grants.gov nationwide grant database. So you can go in here and you can look for different types of grants that can help you to purchase this type of product, or any of our products as well. And so, you know, there are things out there as you know, interesting as there's Walmart grants, and there are, you know, local business grants or bank grants, and then there are very specific grants too. So those are sites you can go to and be able to show or look at that. So I think you can see our funding site. That is where you would get, because there are grants available. The other piece of this puzzle is there are also that, or the interest there for you, hopefully, where, you know, working and talking to local businesses. That's another great piece, because they a lot of times are interested in those kind of opportunities. And we have seen and heard from a lot of teachers that, yep, local businesses want to help. And then when they see what we grow and we bring those produce into their business and share it with them, they're ready to do it again and share more money with us in that sense. Okay, so one person here is saying that they have our producer, but wasn't able to use it during COVID. And so one of the things that plants would germinate, but I had trouble getting them taken off well in the tower itself. Okay, so one of the things with the plants is that our producer is that you start out, the best thing, and we give you a germination tray. is to put that seed into the rock wool that's given there and let that germinate. As soon as you see that sprout, okay, that tells you, okay, yep, it's starting to grow. But what you're going to want to do is take that out and check underneath it and make sure that you can see the root actually growing underneath. If you don't see that root, put it back in place, let it germinate for a day or two until you see that root. Once that, then you want to put it into that the basket. Once you have it there, you put it into the hydroponic system. All right. Now, one of the things that does is it gives that first kind of growth before you actually start growing. And then um, once it's in there, a big piece is making sure that root is down far enough, because that root has to get into that water. Once it's in that water, then all of a sudden it can start sucking up that nutrients. You need to have your fans going, and then your water pumps are going. That gives the oxidization. So the one piece that might have been a trouble is just that root. The other piece, though, and a thing here that you can do too, is this: if this happens to any of you, we have a product support both through email, through chat, and through phone. Call in, let us talk to you, because we have a lot of different ideas that can help in that sense as well. All right. So, question: lettuce continues to grow throughout the cycle. Can you harvest multiple times from one plant? You can do that. A lot of times the second and third time doesn't always come back as well. So, yep, you sure can, but it may not come back as well from the same plant, and so then you may not get as much. So, yep, you can harvest and then let it continue to grow and harvest again. So that's just not a problem. Great question. Now I like this one. Is there a number where I can ask more questions after the webinar? Yes, there is. There is a number. So, and let me see here. Right here, if you call us at 800-830-1416, or the other place you can do, if you want to talk directly to me, the email that was sent to you was my direct email. That was coming right off of mine. So go back to where you got this link to watch our presentation here today. Go into the email, reply, say, hey, here's my number. I want to talk to you about this, this, or this. I will call you personally, and we can have a conversation there. So that's a great question. Another great question. This is a great kind of, once you get in your classroom, how noisy is the unit, and do you need to clean multiple times between growing seasons? So great question. So yes, in this case, there are some noise to it, okay? And part of it is, think of a refrigerator, okay? It's probably to that level, in the sense of that, yep, there are some of those situations in that sense where the system is running, okay? And so there is going to be a little kind of a hum in the background. It's not very loud at all. We've brought it in and we've beta tested to a lot of different schools, and all those different places said, yep, it wasn't even a problem for our students. We don't even see it. It's that white noise, but it's very minimal. So there hasn't been really an issue with that whatsoever in that side. The only noise that comes from it that they don't like is that when your water level gets too low because it's evaporated or the plants have sucked it up, it does beep for you, telling you that your water level is too low. And so you have to add water to it. And so that's the only really noise that comes from our product. The other question is, do you need to clean multiple times between growing seasons? So what we would suggest, and the only time you really need to clean, quote unquote clean, is we would suggest that when you harvest plants, when you're done with that, is to take out the water and put in new water. Okay, and so that just starts your cycle over again. So when you get done harvesting, you would remove the water and put in new water. The only time you really need to clean is if you would have huge amounts of algae bloom that you would want to get rid of. Now in this case, because of how our product sits and the covering, if you have all the plants in place, it then doesn't let a lot of light into the water base. That then takes away a lot of that need for that cleaning. So you can clean every time. We have some who don't clean. The only time we really would say is you probably want to clean is if you have a lot of algae. That's going to be where you want to do that. All right. Is the system continuous running, or does the pump cycle? Asking to see if using solar panels, green would be possible. Oh, good question. So yes. So the system is running, or I should say, is on continuously, but there's different levels. So we have things in our software where, or in our timers, where the lights can be on for 12 hours, off for 12 hours, on for 10 hours, off for 14 hours, on for 14 hours, off for 10 hours. So there's different variables there in that system. The other piece is with the pumps. Those pumps are on and off, same kind of thing. They have different cycling in that sense. So it is something where you might be able to work with the solar panel, but I don't know, it's not set up for that. So that would be something we'd have to kind of look in a little bit deeper in that. So question then, does the water source matter? Some cities have high chlorine levels. Great question. This is something that we worked diligently, and we put this in our quick start guide as well. So when you're getting started, the way that we have found, and we have done different tests, is that yes, one of the things that comes from there is this idea of, yep, there's chlorine in your water. Okay, so what do you do with that? Well, in this case here, one of the things that we look at for that is all you really need to do for that is to bring in your water. Tap water is fine, any kind of water you have, and you let it sit. By letting it sit for 24 hours, that then usually will dissolve or let kind of evaporate that chlorine issue kind of thing. So you can bring in your tap water, you let it sit for 24 hours, and that is not going to be really a problem for you after, as long as it's out and you're letting it sit in that sense. And cycling through. So by cycling it through in that 24 hours, you don't put plants in it, you just let it cycle through. That issue takes care of itself. So that, again, the water source, we have some who will use certain water types, but you don't really have to in that sense. So great question. All right, with that said, I don't see any other questions. Those were wonderful questions. Really appreciate you taking the time to ask. If there's more questions you have, again, feel free to call our toll-free number. You can email me directly. We love to have questions and talk through this. How we can help you is what we want to do. We thank you for your time. Thank you for what you've done, and continue to work hard to educate and help students. Appreciate in this time. So thank you for your time, and thanks for taking the time with us today. Really appreciate it. Have a great one.